Good morning and welcome. Thank you for attending this webinar, which is also being recorded for those who can't join us live online. I'm joined by Jono, our Deputy Principal, Pastoral and Wellbeing, and by Tom, our Director of Boarding, and by Kieran, our House Parent for Abacus House. Thank you for joining us. We're really wanting to share some news which we shared by letter and with students yesterday about our plans for next academic year for Abacus House. So as you know, this was a new provision put in place for this academic year in response to growing need for single rooms for sixth form students. And under Kieran's leadership has been a really successfully run house and given students a real sense of independence. But we've continued to work on solutions to manage the provision for students being off campus. As you're aware, especially those of you who've been with us since day one, our intention has always been that OIC Brighton is an on-campus, all on one campus boarding college and community. And our facilities are here, our provision for students learning and for studying and for eating and for sports and everything is all here on campus. And so there's been continual improvement and development of the operations and logistics for our Abacus students. And as I say, I think that's been managed really successfully. So yesterday we announced to our Abacus Year 12 students that from next academic year, so August of this year, we will be closing Abacus House and bringing everyone back onto campus. And it's a decision that we're able to take in the light of our students' needs and our strong preferences for our boarding community. Tom, as you'll be aware, joined us as Director of Boarding at Easter. And under his leadership, we've had an opportunity to really review what's best practice for our boarding community, and also what does and doesn't work in terms of managing the student experience when they're boarding and accommodated off campus in Brighton. So we discussed this decision with students yesterday afternoon, and we had a real range of responses, as I'm sure you've heard from your children. And some really sensible suggestions and requests and ideas about things that they'd really like to see as part of the boarding provision for them here on campus in their important Year 13 year. So that's been a really useful conversation to have, and some of their questions and suggestions I've incorporated into this presentation today so that we can talk about some of those plans and ideas from our students. So I'm going to run through the rationale for our decision and some of those questions and ideas that have already come up from talking to colleagues and talking to students. And then there'll be an opportunity for you to ask any questions you may have. So you should be able to see a Q&A icon, like a speech bubble. Please post your questions there at any point during this session, and then at the end of our presentation we can answer your questions as best as possible. So you won't be able to use the chat function, but you should be able to post any questions you have in the Q&A. So please do continue to do that, and we will monitor those and answer any questions you've got at the end of the presentation. So the rationale for this really, as I mentioned, is that our plan has always been that we're a campus environment and that we have a single campus community. And it's really important to us that we develop that sense of community and belonging here at OIC Brighton. And in many ways, having everyone on one campus is a real benefit to doing that. And I know that for lots of you as parents, it was the beautiful Ovingdean campus was a big part of the attraction. And yes, we're in easy proximity of Brighton and all the excitement that Brighton offers, but actually having all of our students in one place is really advantageous, and that's always been our plan, and that's certainly our plan for the development of the campus as we move into the next stage of construction. And so it's really been a kind of live question as to whether we can accommodate students, and particularly those single rooms for Year 13 students that we know is really important. We want to promote that on-campus community experience, and it's something that I know is close to Tom's heart as Director of Boarding, but that real sense that students, all of our boarders, are able to join in weekend activities and evening activities and communal activities where they can have, whether it's a film night or a barbecue or some sports that they're able to do, outside of their teaching time. And I think that's something that we feel is much harder for us to provide for our Abacus students at the moment. And that includes the use of communal spaces and suitable spaces for independent study. And that provision is particularly important as students move into year 13, when we know that they are a little time poor and pressed for opportunities for studying for their A-levels. We want to be sure that we can continue to maintain access for our boarders to the facilities that we have on campus. So that's the gym and the dining hall and their provided meals every day, the cafe, some of the outdoor space. It's also part of our regulatory duty in the provision of boarding for our students. And that, again, is a little challenging when we have students off campus. And so to bring everyone onto campus and to ensure that they have that continuity of access, and we know that a lot of our students are very keen, for example, on certain sports, on use of the gym, on those weekend brunches. And so we can ensure that that access is continuous and that it's completely fair and that there's parity for all of our boarders having the same access to facilities. Some of you are more than aware of some of the challenges with transport to and from Abacus. It beggars belief, I realise, that it can be so complicated or trafficky or impunctual. And as you know, Tom and Kieran have worked incredibly hard to improve that service on a day-to-day basis. But we don't really want to continue to risk having any kind of transport challenges for next year. And so that's another part of the rationale for our decision. Now, we wanted to be very sure that we were able to offer our current year 12 Abacus students single occupancy of bedrooms here on campus before we took this decision, because that to us seems to be the most important continuity for them. And it's something they've understandably become accustomed to. And I know from speaking to some of you individually that that's been a key kind of decision factor for you in terms of where their child boards, because that single occupancy is so important for them, and perhaps even more so as they enter year 13. And so for that reason, we've done a lot of mapping and consideration of what we can manage on campus. And we're able to confirm that all of those who are currently in year 12 in Abacus House can have single occupancy of a room here on campus for next year when they enter year 13. And I think that's a really important guarantee for those students because, as I say, that's something that they've become really accustomed to. And for some of them, they feel very strongly about being able to study independently in their rooms, as I know Kieran will attest to. So I'll run through some of the questions that have already come up, and hopefully that will help to answer some of those more frequently asked questions around this decision. And then, as I say, please enter any additional questions that you have into the Q&A using that icon you can see on your screen, and we'll monitor that and answer your questions at the end of the presentation. So we are now able to allocate on-campus rooms and houses to our boarders, and not just our year 12 Abacus students, of course, but for all of our students as they progress into next academic year. And that will be a communication from Tom to our boarding students, we hope this week, Tom, as we allocate houses and confirm the allocation of house parent roles across the houses on campus. So there will be some changes to the existing setup because obviously we have some variation year on year in the size of year groups, number of boys and girls, and various considerations of that nature. But Tom's extremely well placed to understand which facilities are best used for different groups of students. And so we'll communicate that initially directly to the students themselves, and obviously to our new incoming students as well, and we'll share that information with parents and guardians. I'm sure you're keen to know what happens to Kieran, who is an absolute stalwart of the Abacus scene. Kieran will move onto campus and remain a house parent for next academic year, which we're all very delighted about. We have our wonderful team within boarding, which Tom can speak more to, but although each member of the boarding team is allocated to a specific house, they also really work across the whole college and across provision and support across the whole boarding community. And as such, it's our intention that students who board on campus get to know all of the boarding team in different contexts and not just those allocated specifically to their boarding house. For some of our students, we know that the provision of an ensuite bathroom is of particular importance, and we've already had some questions from current Abacus students about that. And so we will be able to make sure that this is an option for our continuing students from year 12 into year 13 with single occupancy. The provision and the layout of the houses does vary quite a lot from house to house. But if that's particularly important to students or to you as parents, then it's really a question of letting us know. And Tom's having that conversation with individual students. We're very happy as a follow-up to this meeting for you to request an individual meeting with myself or with Jono, with Kieran and Tom, so that you can talk through your individual child's needs, and then we can ensure that those are met with their on-campus allocation. I know that there'll be questions about storage. We'd already indicated that Abacus students can store their belongings over the summer. That storage will now be on campus. And so we will assist with the movement of packed up belongings from Abacus onto campus to be securely stored here over the summer months. There'll be an administration fee. We're sending out a flyer this week, but it is very reasonable. And the belongings just need to be packed up and labelled and so on, as you can imagine. So boarding teams will work with students to help them pack up their rooms, work out what they do need to have with them over the summer and what they can securely store here on campus. So that provision is available for Abacus students, as for all of our boarding students who are continuing, if they wish to store things here over the summer. You may remember that we weren't able to do this last summer because we had ongoing building works. So we're glad to be able to offer that provision for this coming summer. Presently, the boarding fee for Abacus students is the same as for single occupancy or a single room on campus. So there's a sort of flat single room fee for sixth form boarding tuition, and that's been the case this year. There is no additional or different cost for Abacus provision, and so that remains the case with students moving onto campus for next academic year. And we had quite a few questions from students about kitchen facilities. There's a real mixed kind of approach there. Some students love the independence of preparing their own meals. Some students have found it a little bit onerous, and some students are very good at instant noodles, I believe, and some very good at baking. So there's a real range. We have kitchen facilities in all of our boarding houses, and we make sure that those are available. But obviously, students on campus, all of our boarding students, in fact, are expected to eat their meals in the dining hall. And we really encourage students to engage with any feedback or suggestions they have about menus and so on. We are happy to continue to review the provision for kitchens. So we've already had conversations with students who really want to be able to bake, or perhaps want to be able to cook in small groups for meals occasionally. And that's something that Tom is very happy to ensure can continue on campus. And we will make sure that we've got the right provision in place. So I think you've already had a request, Tom, for a blender, for example, so we can make sure that those year 12 boys can make their smoothies. So those kinds of things are quite easy for us to adapt and offer, obviously within reason, in terms of what is safe and appropriate for students depending on their age and stage. Another question that came up when we discussed this with students yesterday was the frequency and their ability to be able to go into Brighton. So at the moment, I think one of the perceived advantages of being at Abacus is that they don't have that journey time if they want to go into town. And although that's obviously closely managed, and again, it is dependent on age and stage, that we do allow our students that freedom to go into town if they need to. And we try and balance that with our requirement for them to be focused on their studies, engaging in on-campus activities and so on. So the answer is yes, of course, students will still be able to go into Brighton. We will continue to review which evenings and at what times and for which year groups that provision is available, because obviously for the safeguarding and well-being of our students, we need to monitor their whereabouts very closely. And the students have already voiced that they don't want to be overly dependent on taxis. and have asked us to review the frequency of, for example, shuttle buses that take them in and out of town. That's no issue at all. We also don't want them to be overly reliant on taxis, and we're mindful of our carbon footprint. So we will support that as appropriate. And particularly, I think, for those going into year 13, they value that level of independence. And we know that they're very sensible in terms of how they use their time. And so we'll make sure that that provision is available. I'm going to pause now and see if my colleagues have anything that they would particularly like to add at this stage, and then we'll have a look at any questions that have come up in the Q&A. Can I pass over to you, Tom? Because I know that you've had quite a lot of conversations with students since this announcement, but are also really proud of the provision that Kieran has provided in Abacus for our students this year.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tess, and thank you to parents and guardians for being available today. We know it's a really important discussion to be part of. Yeah, I'd just like to echo Tess's words, really, and thank Kieran and the team for the brilliant work they've done down at Abacus to forge that community. I know that Kieran and the team there will be key players in ensuring that continuity of care for the students next year. I was really impressed by how solution focused students were yesterday. Once they'd had an initial shock with the news, but actually they started to think about how things might look for them on campus, started thinking about timing, started thinking about the fabric of the house. So that's really important. We do want to do this with students, alongside students. Their experience, their lived experience is really what we are passionate about from a boarding point of view, and actually this opportunity gives us that absolute mandate to be able to work on the culture and work on the student experience, and to bring it back to that whole campus and whole boarding model, which is so key to our vision here at OICB, and something that we're really passionate about. So this is an opportunity, an excellent opportunity, and we will continue to have informal and formal communication both with yourselves and students about their ideas, often at supper, that kind of crowd round and ask for things and can we do this, but that's good. We want them to feel part of that day-to-day experience, and that they can shape that, and we are absolutely attuned to the fact that, particularly with year 13s, sixth formers in general, year 12 as well, but actually that what we call age and stage appropriate privilege, really, that comes with being older and being part of the journey for us to ensure that they are equipped and ready for university life as well. So that independence and that ability to be able to cook, cooking lessons. There's already an idea of a whole college cookbook where everybody gets to contribute a menu, a recipe. So actually, there's some really nice ideas coming out, and so we're just really excited about the opportunity to be able to work alongside you and to hear your feedback, but also with the students, and for them to feel very much part of the next step in this decision process, and how it's going to kind of be embedded going forward. So we thank you for your support as well, and we welcome any comments from you.
And we're really committed to investing in our boarding facilities, and we've seen that with the provision of Ovingdean Hall introduced this year, and the wonderful facilities for the students there. And I think most recent examples have been probably, Tom, requests for a pool table, which I know you're looking into, for another piano. We've had students very actively engaged with requesting specific machinery and an update to the layout and facility of the gym. And who better to ask about for information about that than the students who use it frequently. And so there's a significant investment planned again for over the summer, in line with those student requests, and more mirrors, which seems to be important in the gym. But these are good examples of the way in which we're really responsive to student requests, and really committed to investing in that facility for our boarders. Jono, can I hand over to you if there's anything you'd like to add, but also perhaps you might like to field any questions from our participants today?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tess, and thank you to parents and guardians for joining us today just to discuss this important matter. So I've got a few questions which I'm happy to answer either myself or passing it on to the rest of the team as well to answer. And just a reminder, if you have any questions, there is the Q&A box at the top of your page, which you can click on and then write and ask any questions in there, and we'll make sure we answer those for you. And as ever, if you have any questions following this webinar, please do reach out to us. So the first question is regarding luggage, and yes, there will be more information sent out about the luggage storage facilities on campus in the coming days for you. In terms of the timing, we are going to be asking all students to essentially vacate their rooms for the end of term, and we've been making sure we're putting all support in place from a boarding perspective, so there'll be lots of teams of support with that, as well as arranging any transport to bring that luggage onto site. And so yes, the expectation is that there wouldn't be any luggage kept in Abacus House throughout July or throughout summer, that it would be coming to campus. And again, Kieran and Tom will work closely with the students to make sure that they have all that they need for that to take place. I've got a couple of other questions that I'm going to hand over to Tom and Kieran, if that's okay. The first one is regarding just common room access and whether there would be a common room space for the whole house. I think one of the things that have been raised previously is about students having access at Abacus to their own individual flat. Will students have access to a common room where they can socialise with the whole house and all of their friends? Will that be available for next academic year?
It's a really good question, and it's actually one of the key tenets of boarding, right? Is having that communal space where we can develop community. So absolutely within the various models we can propose and are discussing about rooming and housing at the moment on site, it's one of the main things that we wanted to guarantee. Firstly was the rooming allocation, that we've been able to guarantee the single occupancy room, but actually there will be available facilities for everybody to mix within the common room space. And I know the students have spoken to Kieran a lot about how that might look, but that will be, and that will be possible, and it's something that we're very keen about, to be able to really engender that sense of community and house community.
Great, thank you, Tom. And yeah, totally agree in terms of that being such an important space for socialising, studying together during the day, but also to be able to hang out in the evenings and over the weekends to get some time together, with potentially pool tables and other things added in. Great, thank you. So the next question is about potential for staying with host family without moving onto campus, whether it's possible for students to request staying with a host family without moving onto campus. I'm happy to start an answer to this, and then maybe Tess, you can kind of follow on from there. I think obviously, as you will be aware, all of our students that are joining us from overseas have a student visa, and we sponsor that from a UKVI perspective. And so there will be certain conditions that would need to be met in terms of that visa, in terms of where the student would reside. And more often than not, that visa would be handed out on the condition that a student is staying at a school accommodation. That is not to say, however, that we won't look into whether that would be a possibility. And if you've got any particular questions about that from a host family perspective, then please do reach out to one of us individually, and we will look into that matter separately. But I think from a UKVI perspective, we would need to be guided to make sure that we're fulfilling our sponsorship duties on that front. Tess, was there anything to add to that?
Yes, you're absolutely right, Jono, and I think it's a good question to ask, and it's probably one that would be worth having individual follow-ups if you have a specific query, because it's very dependent on the student's age and visa status.
Right. Just two further questions then, unless any parents or guardians want to add anything else into the chat. Just access to the nurse during the daytime. Questions about that, Tom, and the medical centre. Will obviously all students coming onto campus, I'm aware at Abacus that they've had virtual access to our nurse, that our nurse indeed has gone out to Abacus to support the students, and we've had some healthcare assistance as well. Will all of our students on campus have access to the nurse during the daytime from a boarding perspective?
Absolutely, really pleased with that provision, and our new nurse, Nurse Claire Swift, and that's another huge benefit of being on site. Claire works extended days, longer days, and so she will be available from early in the morning until the evening shift when the boarding staff take over. So I know that is something that is really important to families. We really believe in investing in that level of care and expertise to ensure continuity of care. And so that is one of the big benefits of being on site, is that access, that direct access to the nurse. And we know, again, as older students, they want to take agency and take responsibility for their health as well. So this will be a real benefit of being on site.
Great, thanks, Tom. And final question was just regarding just meal rotas and timings over the weekend. I think all of the obviously we've made sure that any Abacus students this year have the provision of being able to come onto campus for meals if they want to. Some have done that, some have decided not to do that and to make arrange their own meals, perhaps because logistically it's quite a long time to come onto campus and back into Brighton. Can you just give us a reminder of what the meal logistics and rota is for the weekend? And obviously it would go without saying that yes, all of our students would have access to campus meals, which would be within minutes of their bedroom and study spaces. Thomas, can you just give us a quick reminder, or Kieran, on meal rotas and access for the weekend?
So weekends are very popular. So students have access to a brunch from approximately 10:45 to 12 o'clock, and then supper at normal time, sort of 5:30 to 6:45. Obviously, with bringing students back onto site, we are reviewing the timing. So it might be that we have to extend the sitting timings across the weekend, and in so doing, we'll ensure that there is a fair and equitable rota, which might mean that, you know, timings change and slots change for year groups, just to make sure it's fair. So it's something that we're very keen to ensure is fair and transparent, and it will something that we logistically are considering for bringing Abacus back on site. So I know that the weekend brunches are very popular. We're doing quite a lot of work with students about food and feedback on food already, and it's something that we will feed into these wider plans.
Great, thanks, Tom. So that I mean, I can't see any further questions. Thank you so much for all of your questions. But yeah, in summary, hopefully that's been helpful. I know we had some FAQs earlier from Tess as well. As ever, if you have any further questions or queries that come up either from you or from your children, then please don't hesitate to send them out to us, and we will make sure that we continue to communicate about key things such as luggage and arrangements for that, as well as any further updates with regard to room allocations, which Tom will be in touch with by the end of this week, and I'll make sure I work closely with him on that. Over to you, Tess.
Thank you so much. Yes, so further individualised communications coming, and please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you'd like to meet to discuss your individual child's needs. I think, you know, an anecdote from last week kind of demonstrates why we feel so committed to having our on-campus boarding community here. It was Enrichment Week. We had the majority of our students chose to stay, given that it's busy exam period, and we were blessed with some really lovely weather. And walking around campus, there were students working in small groups in classrooms. There were students catching up on their laundry whilst reading a book. In fact, in one case, we had students outside playing volleyball on the fields, chatting to their boarding team members, others popping out, maybe going for a walk or a run along the seafront. We had students going into town for running errands and to spend time together socially. And there were really lovely atmosphere of people making the most of the space they had. We had a couple of the touring students come to ask me if they could screen a documentary that they think would be interesting to their peers in our wonderful new theatre. And these are all things that are a very real and tangible benefit of the very beautiful campus that we have here and the community that we've established. And we're really looking forward to welcoming our Abacus students back onto campus for next academic year. So do look forward for more specific communications from us. Do come forward with any further questions you have. And thank you very much for your time and for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.